Hi, I'm Alicia. At my engagement party, my stepmother smiled as she handed me a slice of cake. I didn't know it was laced, meant to shut me up for good. She told the guests I was unstable, that my mother had lost her mind. But what if I knew all along? What if I served her secret to the entire family? Would you have done the same? Today was supposed to be perfect. I stood under the white tent in my father's backyard, the scent of roses and burnt catering trays lingering in the warm Texas spring air. The string lights above flickered against the late afternoon sky, a touch too bright for this time of day. Everything looked polished: floral arrangements, rented cutlery, folding chairs dressed in ivory fabric, but nothing felt right. Holden, my fiancé, adjusted his tie beside me, nodding at a text on his phone more than at the guests offering congratulations. He mouthed a sorry again. I nodded back. He wasn't the problem today. My father's voice echoed from across the yard, greeting guests like a small-town mayor. His wife, Loretta, wore that overly rehearsed smile, hovering too close, brushing crumbs off tablecloths that didn't need cleaning, micromanaging the staff like she owned the house. Technically, she did. She'd planned every inch of this party, despite my every protest. I didn't want this many people, this tent, or that god-awful pastel theme, but here we were. When Loretta approached, she tilted her head in that patronizing way I remembered too well from high school. "You look beautiful, Alicia," she said, pausing just long enough before adding, "I'm so glad you didn't go with that other dress." I smiled. Tight. Hollow. The kind of smile that keeps peace at family functions. I made my way through the crowd, nodding, hugging, laughing on cue, but there was a film between me and everything around me, like I was underwater watching someone else's life. I glanced over at the dessert table where Loretta stood, whispering something to my half-sister, Jocelyn. They both looked my way and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. When Loretta insisted on ordering the cake from her favorite bakery, I'd pushed back. She insisted, called it a family tradition. Never mind that I didn't even like red velvet. The bitterness of my childhood trickled up, being the afterthought, the convenient photo op for my father's Christmas cards. Loretta never yelled. She didn't need to. She orchestrated. Controlled the room with soft tones and sharp edges. My father let her. He stood now, glass raised, giving a speech about love, commitment, and second chances. I tuned him out until I heard the words that made the hairs on my neck lift. "To second chances," Loretta chimed in, raising her flute, "and to those brave enough to marry despite where they come from." A few chuckles, some clinking glasses. Holden leaned into me and squeezed my hand. I laughed, politely. I wanted to hurl the champagne at her face. I watched Loretta retreat, lingering near the cake table. Jocelyn leaned in, whispered something, and Loretta laughed, too loud for the joke to be innocent. Then came the cake. It was beautiful, too perfect. The server began slicing it, placing delicate squares on porcelain plates. A small one was set before me. I hesitated. Something in my stomach turned, not nausea, more like instinct. Holden raised his fork. I stopped him, saying I'd wait. I didn't have an appetite. I noticed my aunt, seated near the end of the table, put down her fork and rub her temples. She slumped slightly. Two other guests coughed. Another stood, swaying before gripping the edge of the table. People murmured. Loretta's voice cut through. "Oh dear, is it the cake? Maybe something was off in the filling." Paramedics were called. The tent buzzed with confused whispers, the celebration dissolving into tension. My father barked instructions into his phone while Loretta comforted a guest like a seasoned politician. I looked down at my plate, my slice untouched. I hadn't eaten it. Back home, I sat on the edge of my sofa, the cake slice still resting on a plate beside me. The decorative icing had started to melt into the frosting. I didn't need to taste it. And I knew. Loretta wanted me to eat that cake, not to kill me. No, she wasn't that obvious. But to humiliate, to rattle, to paint me as unstable, fragile, sickly on the most important day of my life. I replayed her toast, her glance at Jocelyn, her urgency around the dessert, my hands clenched in my lap. She wanted me to be the one who collapsed, I whispered, and she almost got it, but she underestimated me. Again. I'd always smiled through her passive aggression, always took the high road while she paved the low with pearls and pity. Not anymore. I slipped the cake into a Ziploc bag, not out of paranoia, out of strategy. I Googled labs that could test food samples for contaminants. Found one. She wanted a scene, I murmured. I'll give her one, but not today. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Miranda, my best friend since college. I need to talk, but not over the phone. Then, I stared at the wall, letting the quiet settle. What do you do when your own family tries to poison your future? I woke up before the sun rose, eyes dry, mind racing. The house was still, but my thoughts weren't. My untouched cake slice still sat in the fridge, wrapped in plastic like some cursed souvenir. The party was all over the local Facebook groups, neighbors speculating about what went wrong, tagging each other in posts with photos of the collapsed aunt, the flashing ambulance lights. I scrolled through the texts, cousins asking if I was okay, old classmates pretending they were just checking in. None of them knew what really happened. Holden sat on the edge of the bed, pulling on his socks, avoiding my eyes. Babe, maybe it was just bad catering, he offered, the words tentative, like he already knew how I'd respond. I didn't even look at him. People don't faint from room temperature deviled eggs, Holden. His silence was answer enough. He wanted to move past it. I couldn't. Loretta's reaction kept replaying in my head. The dramatic gasp, the hand over her heart, the fake confusion. I should have trusted my gut yesterday. But not again. Not ever again. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I muttered the quote under my breath like a warning bell. Mid-morning, I stepped onto the back porch to clear my head, coffee in hand. That's when my phone buzzed. A voice memo from Dana. She'd been at the party, slipped in late, stayed quiet. We hadn't talked in months, but she was the kind of friend who showed up when it mattered most. I tapped play. Hey, Alicia, I wasn't going to say anything, but I saw something weird. Loretta was talking to one of the servers right before the cake came out. Real low, real close. The guy looked nervous. He wasn't from the catering company, was he? I swear I've never seen him before. I paused the memo. The server, of course. I pulled up the event planning file on my laptop, scanned the staff list. The servers were booked through a trusted vendor I'd used before. Loretta wasn't supposed to have a hand in staffing. I called Dana. I remember his face, she said. I only noticed because he dropped a fork near my chair. Looked like he was about to bolt. Do not mention this to anyone else, I told her. Please. She hesitated. Alicia, be careful, and don't let her know you're on to her. Yet. I ended the call, hands shaking, but not from fear, from focus. Something had snapped into place. This wasn't chaos. It was planned. I opened my dad's home office drawer. He always left the spare key under the runner rug, and grabbed the vendor notes Loretta insisted on handwriting. Her cursive stuck out like thorns. The bakery name scratched in, underlined twice, and a phone number scrawled beside the server listing. I called the bakery. We sent the cake, ma'am, but we didn't send any staff. Just delivery. My stomach clenched. I checked the house phone's call log. My father still used a landline, bless his analog heart. The call history showed a 20-minute conversation the day before the party. The number, not in my contacts. That night, I stepped outside for air and caught Loretta pacing near the garden wall. Her voice was low, but the window was open. She took the bait, she said, laughing softly into the phone, but it didn't hit hard enough. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just listened. She hung up and walked inside, humming. I stayed rooted to the floor, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. She thinks I'm not listening, I whispered, but I hear her, loud and clear. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out an old corkboard from the closet, started pinning up notes, receipts, photos, names, times, my own version of a war map, my truth wall. There had always been little moments, Loretta complimenting me in ways that felt like cuts. You're so brave to wear that dress. You're doing your best. I used to laugh it off. Not anymore. This wasn't about a cake. This was about control. About watching someone's world unravel, piece by piece, without ever raising your voice. If they try to erase you quietly, I muttered as I scribbled down another note, make your return so loud they can't sleep through it. The next morning, I was still in my robe when a knock came at the door. I opened it to find a cream-colored envelope. No return address. Inside, an invitation to brunch, Sunday, at Loretta's. In cursive so elegant it made my skin crawl. Let's move on, darling. Just family. Just love. I smiled to myself, folding the note. She doesn't know I'm writing the next chapter. I got the text from Dad in the early evening. Dinner at home. Let's try to heal. No emoji. Just that. My heart thudding. I typed back, okay. Even though I felt like I was walking into Loretta's lion's den, I chose a red blouse, something I hadn't done in years. It felt like power, like protest. I glanced in the mirror, saw the lines on my face, the stiff posture I'd carried for too long, and thought, you can't heal with the one holding the knife. Then I texted Dana, if I'm not back by 9, assume something's up. By the time I pulled into the driveway, dusk settling, crickets in the yard, I already felt dread. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and vanilla candles, Loretta's special combo when she wanted everything polished, clean enough to erase the stains. I came in early, offering to help. Mom's silver serving platter, Dad's neat stack of linen napkins, all staging. I wandered toward the garage, where wine was stored in a freezer. That's when I saw it. A photo. Framed, burned, part of it scraped off, burned where Mom's face should have been. Gordon, Mom, me, the edges singed, paper curled, my throat closed. I pocketed the photo and drew my shoulders back. Somewhere Loretta had said, some things are better forgotten. I used to believe her. Now, every forgotten thing felt like a wound. We gathered at the table. Dad at the head, Loretta beside him, Holden across from me. Loretta smiled like she owned all of this. She poured wine into my glass first, almost mocking, given everything. Dad raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said, voice quiet. I noticed his eyes were duller than usual, like he'd been awake too late. The conversation swerved around small talk, the weather, work, the roses in bloom, but not the engagement party, not the collapse, the cake, the embarrassment. The air was thick, and I tasted fear in the pit of my stomach. Loretta placed a store-bought pie on the table, too sweet, too shiny. At least it wasn't Loretta's red velvet joke. I declined. She looked at me. I saw the glint. Joy, pain, both. Halfway through dinner, Loretta said softly, remember your 26th birthday dinner? The chicken surprise? I froze. Tuesday night, Mom took me to a small dinner. They served chicken with nuts. I didn't know tree nuts then, or that I was allergic. I ended up at urgent care. I remember the panic, the swelling, the heat on my skin. They never told me because Loretta just laughed. You were always such a picky eater. Dad cleared his throat. Holden shifted in his seat. My mind put pieces together, snapping like brittle glass. This had been going on a long time. Subtle, invisible, poisoned in polite ways. She'd tested me, watched me, poked at vulnerabilities. Metaphorically, sometimes literally. After dinner, I pulled Holden aside near the kitchen doorway. Did you know she said that? I asked. About the chicken? He looked away. I didn't, Alec. I mean, no. I saw doubt in his eyes, not betrayal yet, but I felt alone. He was too used to peacekeeping, never the one to pick fights. When I left their house, night thick around me, I went back to the jewelry box Mom left behind. My fingers went to the false bottom I thought was empty. There, hidden, was a mini cassette. It said, if something happens to me, in faded ink. My breath caught. I pressed record, the tape deck word. Mom's voice cracked through the static. She spoke of fear, of moments she couldn't speak up, of Loretta, of Dad's silence. My stomach turned. Everything changed. I couldn't pretend anymore. I sat in my apartment, the soft hum of the air conditioner, the only sound, after dinner plates cleared and Holden gone. Night had wrapped around Dallas. I held the cassette in my hand, Mom's handwriting, familiar, fragile. I pressed play. Her voice came through crackled tape, low, urgent. If this reaches you, it means I couldn't convince him. Be careful of Loretta. She's not what she seems. The tape played more. Whispers, arguments, my own laughter. I froze. Nostalgia crashed into betrayal. Dust motes in the lamplight danced. I heard things I hadn't let myself remember. Dana's envelope sat open on the coffee table. I pulled out the DNR form, the hospital documents. I hadn't touched them. Too heavy. Now I compared the signature. Loretta's. Every curl of the S, every sharp edge. My hands shook. They didn't bury just my mother's body. They buried the truth, too. I got in my car, drove down streets that felt unfamiliar under night. Dad's house. No lights on in the study. Loretta gone, he said. I held out the tape and the papers. His eyes reddened. You don't understand pressure, he said. I didn't shout. You let her die without a fight. He said Loretta helped him cope. I said, she helped you erase it. I stood in the garage alone. Memories flooded. Mom crying in that same garage, muffled shouting from nights I didn't sleep. Her voice. Some people kill you without touching you. They erase you with words. I remembered. Pain sharpened into clarity. Late night, I sent copies of the DNR document to Dana, who forwarded to a cousin, a document expert. Preliminary analysis suggested forgery. I nearly laughed. Relief tasted strange. Not victory yet, but truth was aligning. Back home, I stared at an old portrait. Dad, Mom, Loretta. For the first time, I considered removing his photo, not from hate, but because I needed distance. I wrote a letter to Mom and slipped it into the jewelry box she left me. I didn't cry. And I set my jaw. As I climbed into bed, my phone lit up. Unknown number. Message. You really shouldn't dig into the past that deep. It might bury you too. I froze. Not from fear, but from knowing someone was watching. The morning light slipped through the blinds, flickering across the desk in my small office. I opened the door, expecting the same blandness. Instead, there it was, a plain envelope, face down, no return name. My name wasn't on it, but I knew whose message it was. I hesitated, heart thudding, then flipped it. The note inside said, "You're making noise in the wrong places. Some stories are best left untold." The paper smelled faintly of roses and something else, Loretta's perfume, the one she uses when she wants people to watch. I looked around. Unlocked door, open window, the hum of computers. Every still thing felt dangerous. Someone had been in my space. At the cafe later, Dana was there, stir in hand, eyes darting at her phone screen. I asked about the envelope. Her reply, vague. Her voice, distant. You think you're letting this go too far, Allie. She tried to steer me off. It hurt. Her voice used to be steady. Now I could taste her retreat. I pressed. You were the one who saw Loretta whisper to the waiter. She frowned. Things are bigger than us now. We can't rewind what people hear. I left with more space between my chest and her. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. I remembered other moments. Loretta opening my dresser when I was out, fumbling through my things, pretending she lost a charger. At the time, I shrugged it off. Now every detail feels heavy. I changed my passwords. I logged every email. No more blindsided. That evening, I opened my laptop when I got home. A link in my email. Footage from the parking garage where Dana met a man. She handed a folder. He gave her an envelope. License plate visible. I paused the video. My stomach dropped. Isaac helped me trace it. Car tied to someone in Loretta's circle. My blood turned cold. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was collusion. I stared at the screen. My reflection ghosted behind the glass. I had everything. Proof, witnesses, fear. It was time. I drove to Dana's house. I didn't knock. She opened the door, surprised. I asked, "Explain this." She avoided my eyes. "It's not black or white." I said, "You think you're the only one with something to lose?" Her silence was accusation. I said, "Then you're already a ghost." That night, I checked my stash, copies of documents, drives, Photos. One drive, gone. Envelope empty. A note. Nice try. Let's not do this again. My heart pounded. Someone's always watching. Walking ahead of you, pulling strings. But I'm not stepping back. Chapter 6. The Reckoning Begins. The email arrived mid-afternoon while I was in my cubicle, pretending to finish an analysis report. The subject read, Gala Program. Please finalize by EOD. My stomach clenched. I clicked into the PDF attachment. There it was. Loretta Voss, keynote host. Under that line, in smaller font, my name. Alicia Rivera, guest speaker. Legacy of Amanda Rivera. The layout made it clear who owned the spotlight. Memories of years past flashed. Invitations missing my name, slideshows that ignored my mother's contributions, speeches where I clapped and smiled while thinking, that should have been me up there. I closed the attachment, heart pounding, but I made up my mind. I would speak truth, even if they tried to silence me. Even if the stage belonged to her tonight, I would not fade into the background. After work, I sat in my car outside the gala hall, program pages spread across the passenger seat. Boone had dropped off a USB drive. Evidence, Loretta rehearsing parts of my speech when I was away, changing sentences, bending meaning, her voice in the recording, faintly coaching someone off camera. Make her sound humble. She'll thank you later. I pressed pause again. Rewind. The words slammed me. She is rewriting my voice. I thought, what is the line between respect and erasure? If I walk on that stage, will people think I'm overreacting or finally refusing to pretend? I glanced at my phone. Holden's name under caller ID. I breathed, replied, I'm going on stage whether they call or don't. Evening came quickly. The gala room glowed under crystal chandeliers, chatter floating above whiskey glasses and hors d'oeuvres. I stood backstage, speech in hand, hands trembling. The organizers called for Loretta. Applause, my turn after. But the microphone placed in front of me sputtered, static, then nothing. Loretta, already at the podium, nodded toward the technician, managing whispers. Just a little glitch. I stayed where I was. I could feel thousands watching, judging, expecting me to cave. But instead, I stepped forward. Without mic, I raised my voice. This woman pretended for years that my mother vanished, that my memory of her doesn't matter. My words carried through the silence. Some gasps. Chairs shifted. Loretta's eyes snapped toward me. Afterwards, a few guests discreetly approached, sympathy in their eyes, a couple with admiration. Loretta left in a storm of whispers. Holden found me backstage. He said, You were brave. I nodded, voice caught in chest. I clenched the USB drive in my purse, evidence now my shield. Later that night, I got a ping on my phone. Unknown sender. Video link. I pressed play. Loretta, adjusting the microphone, smoothing out words she'd written using parts of my speech. The clip spread across social media already. Notifications blinking, comments piling in. They couldn't erase this version of truth. Chapter 7. The Turning Point. I parked in the church lot just before sunset, Boone already leaning on the hood of his car, laptop open, files spread across the seat. The light was fading behind the church steeple and the air smelled of approaching rain. I stepped out, hands in pockets, trying not to betray how much fear and anger were tangled inside me. Boone's eyes met mine. No judgment, just concern. They were talking, he said, voice low. Loretta and someone from Dad's office, about silencing unwanted voices. My chest tightened. Conspiracy didn't sound like a harsh word. It sounded like what I already knew. I pulled every piece of evidence I had, the tape, forged DNR form, years of email drafts. With Boone's help, I began to build a timeline. When the calls happened, when Loretta changed vendors, when Dad's medical suggestions became disappearances. My heart raced, rage and dread mixing until all I could taste was betrayal. I remembered Mom's voice. Secrets always find their way to light. Boone nodded when I said her words aloud. He said he'd always thought I deserved better. Boone took a breath. I have to say something, he confessed. He said Loretta approached him months ago. No money. But she offered community spotlight, small events, recognition, influence. He denied at first, but slowly, he let her narrative shape part of his involvement. I stared at him, that stab of betrayal cutting deep. He is a friend. He was not supposed to be compromised. He looked away. I never agreed to lie, Alicia, he said. I thought silence was safer. The betrayal stung worse than I expected, but it hardened me. Truth felt like armor. Later, I confronted Dad over tea, the same fragile china Mom used. I asked why he'd skipped critical moments, those calls at odd hours, ignoring medical advice, leaving Mom to rest when she needed fight. Silence hung between us until he said, I couldn't go against her. I wanted to shout, what about going against what was right? Instead, I poured my tea, voice steady. You let her erase my mother's voice. He flinched, avoided my eyes. Grief came in waves, not just for Mom, for what I thought I had with Dad, for belief in friendship, for the idea that wanting truth didn't make me ridiculous. I found myself in my room, writing a private letter to Mom. Sorry for believing too long that things could change. Sorry for being naive. But I resolved, no more seeking his approval. I made plans. The fundraiser is 2 days from now. I told Boone I would need press contacts. I drafted a memo summarizing evidence. I recorded a message to share publicly if Loretta tried to silence me again. I practiced speaking without fear. Facts would be my weapon. That evening, when I arrived early at the fundraiser hall, guests trickled in, chandeliers flickering overhead. From behind, I heard Loretta greeting someone. Laughter, clapping. She said, "Welcome home, Anna." The name froze me. Anna. The name I never expected to hear. I turned slowly, heart in my throat. A woman stepped into view. My chest tightened. The ghost I believed gone just walked into the room. The gala hall glowed under crystal lights. Evening air carried perfume, laughter, the soft clinking of glasses. I stepped inside, flash drive in my clutch, every truth I'd gathered heavy in my purse. Loretta was at the head table, poised, smiling like she'd already won. Cameras flashing. The stage set for her. My throat tightened. I thought, this isn't just about me. Tonight, many will see. Many will judge. Just before the keynote starts, the MC dims lights. A pre-recorded video flickers on the screen. Mom's voice, urgent, articulating pieces of manipulation, the forged DNR, the signature that didn't match hers. The audience shifts. Loretta's smile slips. Maybe first one guest gasps, then two. Some hands gasp, others cover mouths. Loretta raises a glass, stands, tries to speak, but the MC cuts her off. My heart pulses, their whispers rise. I stand unsteady as the screen projects what she hid. Then chaos. A guest collapses. Paramedics rush. Loretta's vendor staff scramble. Security footage from earlier. Someone tampered with the cake. A vial, injection, hands shaking. I heard someone whisper in the crowd. She poisoned the cake. I held my breath. I didn't scream. I watched. The vendor change Loretta orchestrated in private, now speaks in public. My own data. Photos from Chapter 2. Video confirmation. The betrayal becomes visible. I walk to the stage. Microphone in hand now, working. Loretta's face, rigid. I look out at the crowd, some faces I know, some strangers. I say, this cake wasn't just dessert, it was meant to silence me. No stutter. I list evidence, vendor swap, whispers, letters, forged documents. I ask, do you think my mother deserved this erasure? Silence. Then murmurs. Some nod. Cameras roll. Loretta's attempt to shame meets resistance. I end. Let this night be the one truth shines louder than fear. Loretta flees. Gordon tries to find words. Holden, Boone, Dana, all near me. I see tears in some faces, respect in others. Press papers snap photos. Some guests record. The room tilts with relief and sorrow. Vindicated but raw. I clutch the flash drive like it's a lifeline. Some part of me expected peace. Instead, I got exposure, pain, and hope. Outside, the limo lights blur. Anna steps out, letter in hand. Mom's handwriting. She says quietly, "She wanted you to have this when the truth came out." My heart stutters. I reach, hands shake. The final piece of the puzzle slips into place. I woke up early, the sky just pale light over Dallas rooftops. My gala dress still hung on the closet door. I sat on my balcony, coffee mug in hand, the letter trembling between my fingers. Anna was beside me, quiet, like someone waiting for a signal. The city stretched below, cars, birds, people waking. It felt like the world was trying to move on without me. The letter unfolded truths Mom had whispered in her pain. Loretta's manipulation, layered, hidden, how she shaped every event so it erased Mom bit by bit. Her fears, her hopes for me, not to be a shadow, not to let this quiet cruelty define my voice. One line slashed through the rest. Your light will always burn brighter than their shadows. That hit like a wave. I realized Mom had seen everything. She trusted me where she couldn't fight. By mid-morning, the fallout was everywhere. Local headlines, stepmother's scheme unveiled at charity gala, old co-workers texting. Neighbors who once nodded with pity now wrote, "Thank you for standing up." Loretta's under investigation. Former staffers reaching out. Dad posted a public apology, not naming Loretta, but admitting his silence. It stung, but it meant something. For the first time, I felt known, not as someone unfortunate, but someone with grit. I met Holden at a quiet cafe. He looked relieved, tired. "I always believed there was more," he said, and I saw in his eyes what I needed to see. Respect, not just sympathy. Boone joined us, a stack of letters and emails we'd gathered. We talked not about what might have been, but what now needs to be. Dana came later. No blame, just tears and understanding. She said, "She'd be proud of you." I nodded. Some love doesn't come with perfection. Some just hold steady when the world tries to shift you. In the following weeks, I turned back to art. Canvases I abandoned, I now painted with colors that felt like healing. A community center asked me to speak about resilience. I didn't shout. I shared my story simply. My mornings became quiet, walk and journals. My baking resumed. Sourdough, cookies, things I used to make with Mom, now without fear. Loretta's name no longer haunted my dreams. She lived in my past now. I founded a small foundation in Mom's name, helping others reclaim lost voice, quietly but firmly. One afternoon, I drove to the botanical garden where Mom loved to wander. Anna came with me, clutching a small box. We spread Mom's ashes under a willow tree, her favorite. The soil smelled of rain. I whispered, "You gave her peace." Anna replied, "She gave you strength." I stood for a moment, not broken, whole. I didn't just survive. I outgrew the betrayal. A few days later, I found an envelope on my doorstep. No return address. "A sibling you never met," it read. My heart beat. Something old stirred in my chest. Curiosity, fear, hope. I touched the paper, thought of possibilities. I held the envelope with both hands. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I would open it. Because some chapters aren't meant to end with sorrow. They end with you choosing to keep going.